We are beautifully, melanated.
Welcome to the Beautifully Melanated podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sarah, and I'm here with my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Karen.
I'm Kay. Welcome. So before we go into tonight's episode, I wanted to revisit last week when we spoke about rest. Now, I have a meditation book called Ancestors Said 365 Meditations for a Peaceful Year by Ehime. And the reading, interestingly, for the 24th of July, which was last Sunday when we recorded, was about rest. And I actually hadn't read it that day. So I wanted to share it with you and nicely segue into a couple of, one change that's coming up for the podcast in August. So the reading is from it says, Ancestors said, when we rest, we bring in the peace that is our birthright. Even when we rest, we will see abundance. Even when we rest, we will see all-encompassing blessings. So I'd like to leave that with you for those of you who are still struggling with resting. And in that spirit, us ladies are going to have some rest for the summer. So in August, we will be releasing episodes every fortnight rather than weekly. So stay tuned. We are still around. Gives you also a chance to catch up on the episodes you haven't listened to yet in the break. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah. We're going to get started with tonight's episode.
Thank you, Kay. So, guys, tonight I thought it'd be interesting to talk about wellness. And with wellness and looking after yourself, as we know, it starts internally. And then it would move to externally. And we all know people that kind of look after themselves externally, but it's like they're kind of rotten to the core inside internally. So I thought it would be really useful and really good to talk to a very, very old friend of mine, Mel, who I've known for many, 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 many years, over a decade, I'd say now. And Mel is a Yoni steaming specialist. So this is going to be a really good episode, guys. And she's also a holistic wellness coordinator. Now, she has a company called Garden of Self. And it does many things, as well as they send out Yoni steaming herbs, which I myself have tried. They're fantastic. So I wanted to kind of go over to Mel and thank her for coming on our podcast. And kind of just, Mel, welcome, first of all, to the Beautifully Melanated podcast. And I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit more about your company and about you as a person, how Garden of Self came about. And yeah, just about any kind of tips and kind of ideas you have for the listeners when it comes to Yoni steaming and wellness.
Wow. Well, first and foremost, thank you, ladies, for having me. Sarah, Kay, how are you? And also Karen, thank you for having me as well. So I really appreciate it. I think wellness overall is a really broad spectrum. I think sometimes when we approach it, it can be overwhelming at times. So for me, Garden of Self is my experience of how I came to realize how precious our garden of self really is. Kind of really brief backstory. Youngest of four, very small. And when I went to school, all my female friends were very developed, want of a better word. And I wasn't. So being smaller one, I didn't have school for cramps and whatnot. And I thought, well, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. As I got older, maybe 16, 17, maybe once every 6 months. So I was like, well, go to the doctor, have a look. I'm like, it's fine, so go and have a check. Went to the doctors, pretty reluctant to kind of investigate, give me different types of contraceptions. I went on at least 6 to 7 Norplant coil, didn't need them, wasn't active, but that was their solution for my body doing what it should do in essence. Got to my early 20s and still it didn't feel right. My body was doing what it should have done in essence, but I didn't feel right. So I went to the hospital. I had a scan that revealed that I had polycystic ovary syndrome, which for those that are kind of really sure, it affects your ovaries and also how you produce your ovulation. It can affect your periods, how often, affects fertility. It can be a bit hairy in some experiences. So it's quite a wide spectrum, but again, it's not specifically why it happens. So as a female, I'm like, well, what happens? They're like, we can't help you. We're really sorry. And it's unlikely you'll be a mother ever because you've got one fallopian tube that works. And we're not quite sure if you'll ever have children. So went about life. Got to about in my mid-20s. My aunt had severe adult acne. And she said, well, come with me to a herbalist. This is an Oriental herbalist at the time. Went with her, kind of touched my wrist, looked at my tongue, did a few other checks. And she said, I want you to drink these teas and do Yoni steaming. Now, we're talking a couple of decades, and I'd never heard of Yoni steaming before. And herbs, I generally knew of them as like a washout. I don't know if you ladies can relate to you. They wash out
yes.
over the summer. You know, it's not
Usually thirsty bush.
Come on now.
Yes.
So I'm like, this isn't really what I want to be doing. I started it and then I stopped. But when I did commit, I realized that my body went through an absolute change. It was amazing. I felt the change. I felt the cleanse, the purging. And ultimately, between like that's 4 months, I started to have periods. And it was, you could just see the change in my body and I could feel it. And I felt revitalized as a woman. I felt like a woman inside. I was in my mid-20s. And everything else that came with being a woman, I was experiencing, but I hadn't experienced that about myself. So met my partner at the time and he's like, I want children. I said, mate, I can't help you because I was told it's not going to happen. We had a relationship and I ate out a lot. And I thought I had food poisoning. And it turned out I was 3.5 months pregnant with our first son. I'm like, excuse me? They're like, yeah, you're 3.5 months pregnant. And that is why I'm like, wow. We had Cavell, thank God, healthy, wonderful birth, fantastic, kind of with life. 18 months. Another spout of food poisoning, one of a better word. Our second son, came about. And I had no medication. I can honestly say that it is through Mother Nature and committing to taking care of myself and giving myself what I needed. Through blessing, we were given 2 wonderful, healthy, amazing boys. And I went through that, that practice of self-care. But to kind of crank it up a little bit, about 8 years ago, life was very challenging. And I could not get through it. And we've all had difficult moments where like, how am I going to get through this? Life was just full on. And all I had, in all honesty, was a bath and a prayer. When things were just so full on and I couldn't manage, I would go in that bathroom and I would lock that door and a candle and a prayer and a bath. And that time with me got me through that week, that month, and I realized, again, when you're in your bath and you sit with your own person, you're like, because you're your garden. If you don't nurture yourself, you will dry out. If you don't pour into yourself, you will be a weedy, dusty tumbleweed of life. And you are happy to have a relationship, to be a friend, to be a sister, to be a mother from a very dry and parched land. And I'm like, you know what? That's what it's about. It's just loving who I am. And when I'm loving, I'm nourishing, I'm flourishing in all essence. Going on from that, our son had kind of bad skin at the time. When you have eczema rashes, aqueous cream, that oilating where your child slips around in the bath, that kind of thing. And he was allergic to it badly. His godmother's Nigerian and she gave me shea butter. And literally from his birth, I've been formulating body butters and I transformed to natural hair. And I've got really into being my true essence, which was amazing. So over the years, just being aware of who I am, God itself kind of came about. And it wasn't really until lockdown, hence why I asked you guys, how you guys came about, that my friend's like, I was on furlough. I'm like, I might not go back. And I'm at home. My sons are at home. We were just all together in this bubble. I'm like, if I was to drop down tomorrow, would I have done what I believe I'm here to do? Honestly, openly. And I started Garden of Self officially. I had done work. I do workshops before about wellness, but that's another part of Garden of Self. But to really put myself out there as somebody who's willing and committed to encouraging and empowering, not women, but men, but women, because we're happy to sacrifice ourselves and be like, I'll get round to me when there's time after everything else has been done. And it was just frustrating me. And with lockdown, I just saw a lot more people just crumbling under the uncertainty. So yeah, I went for it. And that is how Garden of Self kind of came about. Yeah, that's the first question, Sarah, right?
That's brilliant. Mel, I love what you said about the kind of dry, dusty tumbleweed. I was kind of laughing then, even though I was on mute, because you're right. You're so right. We have to kind of re-nurture our private parts. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you can be looking after yourself, putting all your shea butters on and everything, but you're not looking after her often. Well, I know I haven't all the time, so yeah, I think it's really, really good that you say that, you promote that for women. Talk to me a little bit about the kind of herbs you put into the Yoni steaming herbs, how often someone should do it, and kind of advice along those lines, please.
Could I just jump in, Mel, and ask you first of all to say what Yoni steaming is?
Right. I was going to say.
Yeah.
Right. Again, Yoni steaming, it's a very, for some people, it's quite a new term. I'm really glad you asked that. In essence, Yoni steaming is a way of healing your sacred feminine space. And the practice is a very ancient practice. It goes across cultures from the Asian, the African. It's a very, women back then really understood the power of the feminine energy, and they would take time to practice sitting down in a circle, sisterhood in its real form, really, and just sitting, healing, getting their herbs of properties. I will go through some of them as to why I use them, and just sitting and just healing their womb, their sacred space. And it was the temperature. It's not like boiling, bubbling water. It's not a cauldron you're going to sit on, but it's creating that experience for yourself where you will steam gently through selective herbs that are focused and targeted on what you would look at to consider to heal. And that could just be relaxing. And some people have had like moisture issues or concern where they feel like, I just don't feel myself. Hydration, healing, postpartum, after your ovulation. These are the times where we should take care of ourselves, and then implementing that practice maybe once a month, twice a month, when you are aware and conscious of giving your body that time to heal and repair. Because let's be honest, she goes through a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she does.
She goes through a lot. We talk about like underwears and sanitary towels and trousers and all the other things. Before we talk about pleasure elements, our sacred space goes through a lot. So it's like giving her back what she gives to us, and also cleansing and purging from all the things that come about. So in that sense, I hope that answers your question, but I'm happy to discuss more about it. But that's the practice of Yoni steaming. And again, it depends on what concerns or things you want to address as to how frequently. But once a month, there's a general maintenance just to hydrate. I would suggest just after your cycle, just to kind of have that cleanse, that purging and that healing, just to help with just realigning again as well. If you're looking at irregularities or fertility, I've worked with women that have fertility concerns, you would crank it up to maybe twice a month. And consistently, everything takes time. You have to give your body time to digest and process what's the change, because it is a change and maybe something you haven't done before. I mean, there was some douching was quite a popular thing, and that was done for various women. So it's a healthy practice as to how and how when it should be done. In terms of herbs, there's various herbs that are used. Rose petal is a really good one because of its calming element. Chamomile is also beautiful for healing. Lavender is calming. You have a mugwort, antibacterial, antifungal. You have those that help with cramps. So again, I do consultations because I think it's really important to know what's going to benefit your particular concern. I think it's good for women to kind of be aware that it's a process, but it's also a commitment as well to yourself, because it's not an overnight thing. And you can see, but it is something that you would have to practice and implement most definitely.
Karen, did you have a question?
I was just going to say, I'm absolutely fascinated by this. I'm absolutely fascinated. It sounds amazing. Honestly, this just sounds absolutely amazing, because I was just thinking to myself, you're right. We do go through a lot. And I'm due to have a smear test because the GP, surgery, whatever, wrote me a letter and said, this is due, blah, blah. And usually, even things like that, I put off. I go, I must make that appointment. I don't do it. And that's awful, because if it was my child and they needed something, I'd be right down to my GPs, wouldn't I? But for me, I'm like, I'll sort it later. But you're right. We do need to take time for ourselves and prioritize ourselves. So I am, honestly, I can't wait to try it. It's like, sold. Rose petals.
About it as well. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And I also think, as you were talking, it made me think about the changes that my body is going through. I think I'm perimenopausal. So it'd be interesting to see if you have any special sort of herbs or anything you could recommend for that. But additionally, I think in terms of even the scent of ourselves, sometimes that changes depending on where we are in our cycles and things like that. And I wondered if that might help kind of with those sorts of issues.
Well, again, these are conversations that I think women need to have more of. We're very feminist in our equal rights, our sexuality, our freedom, our equality. But I feel we need to be more open about our bodies in an individual way. We go through changes. I do work with women who are menopausal. And I think that, it's like women to a certain age get shown appreciation and we encourage that. But when you get to another phase of your life, that's not as celebrated. When again, you're still a woman. You're always going to be a woman. So why shouldn't the changes of your womanhood be celebrated, included, and, valued just as all the others? I just think we don't do that. And that's why I think it's important to do wellness workshops, have discussions around wellness, because it's so important to our well-being, especially after the pandemic. So yeah, you have herbs and tea blends. I also formulate to help with cramps and just changes in body cycle. So I do that as well. It's really important.
I can't wait to try. Sounds good.
Mel, talk to me about what you use to kind of sit on when you're doing the steaming, because I've seen a few various things. When I had your herbs, I kind of just put a bowl and a long skirt on. But I think to do it every month, I think I'd want to be more comfortable. So can you say a little bit more about what someone would use or what they may order or how that would work?
Yeah, sure. In terms of the tools, in essence, it would be a bowl. Maybe a seated bowl. You can get lovely, beautiful Yoni steaming seats that can be created depending on the space facilities you have, obviously. And then if we're just like back to basics, you can. For me, my bathroom is my shrine. When I lock that door, I'm like, this is all me. Like, see you later. So it's lights, it's candles, it's creating that ambience for yourself, So within that, one of those easiest ways, especially for a beginner, is we provide one of our starter kits. Is there's a seat that you can actually attach that kind of sits within your bowl, your bathroom toilet bowl. Within that, you would put your blended herbs. So your unique blend, you would place within that, and you would wrap yourself with either a very long towel or a long skirt, and that will be inclusive. So, for example, the Garden of Self experience would include a Yoni steam. Then you may have your bath. Then you may have your shower. And then you may have your body wash. So it's all an experience. It's not, again, that's why it's not just it's a fluid time to give to yourself. If you're going out to a party, you have a bath, you get ready. If you're going to a ceremony, a really lovely dinner, it's the process to get to that result. So I feel that it's the tools are important, but it's also the whole environment. It goes further than just the seating element as well.
Definitely. And I'm just thinking also about what Karen said about different times in your cycle. And I was thinking actually of you, and I was wondering if you do, or you were thinking about doing things kind of called about with Yoni oils, because I have this oil I bought, a Yoni oil. I did loads and loads and loads of research about this Yoni oil, and the stuff's amazing. My God. It's just like, and it's luxury. It cost me quite a bit of money, but I wanted to get the good stuff. The smell, the feel of it. So I think to me, it's all about pampering the private parts, that the garden of self. And I thought about you, and I thought about, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to do a steaming with garden of self, and then have put on a Yoni oil, and it's just time for yourself. And I love what you're saying, Mel, about shutting the bathroom door and having time for you, which is really, really important. So I don't know, would you think about producing a Yoni oil, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, I've had a few suggestions about Yoni oils. And again, I just like to make sure that all my products are researched effectively.
Yeah.
The right balance, the formulation is key. So I have heard it would possibly fit really good within the Garden of Self range.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's about the luxury experience that you're giving to yourself. And that includes beautiful products, well-crafted products, so that it can complement what you're giving to yourself, because, you are your garden. You really are. And I think when you invest in that time quality, it's just a win-win. It's such a win-win.
Mel, I have a question for you. I used to douche all the way through college. So you're looking at 17 to 20. I used to douche a lot, loved the feel of it. And then we had all these health warnings that we shouldn't. It disturbs the pH balance of your vagina, so forth, so on. And then I haven't done anything since. So we're talking, I'm 48. So quite a while. And my lady garden is not in use at the moment. She's been closed for nearly 4 years. So do I still need to do a steam? I mean, I'm perimenopausal. I'm certified perimenopausal. But I haven't experienced any dryness down there or any change in smell. I do like how I smell. Would I need a Yoni steam?
I think with any body part, I don't want to say if you don't use it, you lose it, but it's good to keep everything in shape, in order, ladies. You know what I mean? So don't wait for the action before you start paying attention.
Okay.
I would say self-preservation is key first and foremost, exclusive of somebody else. So it is about feeling your optimum at any given point in any scenario. So I would say yes, definitely. Right. I would say incorporating how you feel about yourself in this stage of life is also very important before you even reopen the garden itself, in essence.
Fair enough. I do still feel juicy, but I think, I'm all for the high level self-care. I'm here for it. And that is top level self-care.
Yeah. Well, I say this, I have ladies and some men who have, because I'm going to be very real, ladies.
Please be.
There's been men that have commented about certain levels of reaction, moisturization with ladies that have Yoni steamed. And I find that women are more aware and conscious of what their Yoni needs, because she will ask if there's underwear today. Yes, if there's none, then she will say, I don't want to today. Because there's a deeper connection and of understanding of hydration. Like, oh, hello. Oh, not even we were there. Because we're connecting. We're having that connection with all of ourselves. It's not a detached part of us. I think that's what I'm really want women to relate to and connect with. She's not just here as and when. She is the hub of who we are. And respectfully, let's treat her that way in all of her seasons and change, as we would treat ourselves or our children, from terrible twos to, the toddler stage to pre-teenagers to teenagers to going out. So there are phases in life that we celebrate for all people external. So we should do the same with ourselves, I feel. So that's why I think workshops are so important, and conversations like this are absolutely brilliant.
I do have another question, and it's now my therapist head on. So you talked about it's not a disconnected part of ourselves, and that's quite important to hold in mind, that for some women, they've never felt connected to their yoni or never had a chance to own it, where there are instances of sexual abuse or any kind of sexual assault or violation, and so might not feel connected to that part of their bodies because of that trauma to it. In terms of what the Garden of Care does, do you incorporate anything that will say to someone who's never been friends with their yoni to hey, reclaim it. She's yours.
Yeah. I'm a big believer of speaking positively, affirming, declaring, decreeing, deciding intentionality over most things where possible, because I feel where there's power, there is life. So when you are taking that time for you, you are owning yourself, you are reclaiming yourself. So when you speak, I put affirmations within the pamphlet to speak, I am love, I am source, I am connected with who I am. So we can remember, yes. And also it's to forgive ourselves, to heal ourselves, to be open to that flow of communication through us. So I'm a huge believer of speaking positively and openly about ourselves and our yonis overall.
I'm loving this, Mel, and I'm just thinking now, being mother of a daughter, and my daughter, how I am teaching her about menstrual cycles already, and she's understanding things. And I was actually just saying, and that's, well, TMI, but we're talking about it now. But I have just brought a menstrual cup to try, because I think, like you said, that your Yoni talks to you and communicates what she needs. Exactly. And I'm going to try this menstrual cup because I just feel that's what's being communicated to me. And I think having a daughter, it's important to kind of educate our daughters to understand more about, the Yoni, and just pampering her and stuff. Because I think a lot of people wouldn't say that. They would say, there's a sanitary towel. When you start your period, there it is. There's more to it than that, isn't there?
More to it. Of course. I've got 7 goddaughters because I was blessed with 2 sons, and I openly discuss with them the love for your Yoni, because she is your gold, your precious God-given uniqueness. And again, there's all this sexuality promoted, all this radical femininity, but being comfortable with being who you are. And as a woman, as a Black woman, I know that I resisted being a feminine woman, because I know what a strong woman looks like. I've got sisters I've got aunties, we can no doubt identify with strong Black feminine role models.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to femininity within us, there's a resistance that I feel needs to be embraced, open, explored, and be shouted off and be proud. I'm a proud woman who is in awe of her beauty as a woman, and that's beautiful. It's not a weakness. It's a beautiful, vulnerable strength that we have. So I think it's important to, when you're talking about cycles with young ladies, to appreciate the blessing to even have cycles. It's a symbol of your womanhood, your beginning of a wonderful journey without the aesthetics, So yeah, it's really lovely.
I didn't get the sacredness of my Yoni growing up. And that might sound strange given I grew up in the church. The teachings around it were very negative. It certainly wasn't seen as a sacred part of me that gives life, or, it was very much, don't use it till you're married, then use it for your husband's pleasure, not yours. But at no point was I encouraged to own it. So I wanted to tap into something you said earlier about pleasure. Can we bring in the pleasure now?
Yes, it's amazing. My other half, he knows when I've had one, most definitely. Because there's a liberation, there's freedom that is given because you own it. You're open to sharing, and that's why it's so precious. Because when you share your body, you're exchanging the most beautiful gift you have. And when you're comfortable and happy and excited, that shows. That shows in multiple ways. And your partner, your husband, your other half, he will know, because there's a liberation, there's an expression and a freedom that comes with it, because you have to sit with your legs open when you're doing your own stuff. I'm going to be very graphic with you, ladies.
Please,
when you sit openly, there's a shock at first that women have said to me, oh my gosh, my legs are open. Because there was nothing coming towards you.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing, you weren't preparing yourself for experience with anybody else other than yourself. It was a stillness, it was a reconnection, and it was an allowing a flow to go through you without anyone else involved. That is precious. So when you're comfortable having that time with yourself, you're like, I'm good. I'm nice. I'm great. And you're more than welcome to join me. You're more than welcome to be invited into my space because I'm comfortable and I like the space that I'm in. So when it talks about pleasure, it's pleasure both ways, but it's heightened by the awareness and the ownership of not who you are, but what you possess within you, and the free will to share, because you can and it's yours. And you know that she's nice, you know she's taken care of, she's
Fresh.
trimmed, she's tidy, she's fresh, she's good. So if I let you have a lovely time in my garden, you know you're blessed.
Right? You better give thanks.
You know, something you said really resonated because actually Kay was talking about the fact that she doesn't have a partner currently. And I think that it's really important to celebrate yourself when there is no one, because actually it's not about anyone else. It's about you. And like you say, owning that and knowing who you are and being in touch with your own sensuality. And that was really important for me after my separation from my husband, just getting to know me again, you know? And so I think what then happens is that you're then, I don't know, you just feel free, you know yourself, you're confident, you feel great about you, so that then you can receive someone when you are ready and it's time for that person to come into your life. They're coming in, you know, and meeting a woman who is sure of herself.
And that's true femininity. Sorry to interject like that. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
But as you said, when you said that, you said something really important. You got to know yourself. And to me, that is the true essence of femininity. I don't need to shout from the rooftop to be feminine.
Yeah.
I think that's been done. And I don't always see that as actually have served women as great as they think it has, to some extent. To understand who you are, with who you are, which is yourself. Because when all is said and done, everyone rolls over, they go home or whatever, you're still you with you. And that will never ever change. That will never change. And I feel that when that's done, you can then be like you said, I'll invite you into my party because it's at my house, on my terms, and it's absolutely fine. So I think it's really important that we have that as women and talk about that and encourage that. That's just my thought. But thank you for sharing. Really
it's very empowering. Yes, it is. That thought's very empowering.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm thinking also about a lot of the young women that I work with, Mel. And I think that, you know, the kind of 16 of my sixth formers, they could really do with a workshop. You know, they are of age, you know, they are sexually active, they are, you know, legally allowed to be, you know, and they need to know about, you know, looking after their yoni, even from my daughter's age, really upwards. I feel like they need to know about pampering it. Even she's 9. And I think I'd like to already talk to her about, obviously she's not going to be yoni stimulating at 9, but I'm saying I think I'd like to make her aware that when she does become an age that she wants to experience that, then, you know, that's an option for her. And it's part of loving yourself, isn't it? It really is. And I love having this chat. Literally, I just want to go and jump on a Yoni steaming stool right now.
Same. I am so ready.
It's quite empowering. It's just such a part of who we are that we don't realize until we have these conversations. It's like the unspoken element of womanhood. And I find that when there is conversations and when there is an opportunity to discuss, I think we should. So when I started doing workshops, I talk about self-care. So it came about this through opportunity and conversation. And I worked with ex-offenders, vulnerable young women, young people, just understanding the importance of self-care. And you will be surprised. One of the things that we speak about is, what does self-care look like to you? And people were looking around the room because it's not something that's a part of practice in general. And I do believe it's just time to get self back into the mix of things, definitely.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's just nice to talk about this. And I think also a lot of people, like you said, looking around the room, might be quite embarrassed to talk about this. The same people that may be quite embarrassed to talk about a menstrual cycle, you know. But I think it's important to talk about it. It's important to talk about it like anything else. So I think we need to be talking about it more with our young ladies and our girls, and you know. So when it comes to your workshops, Mel, are you going to be doing some more workshops? I mean, who do you normally roll it out to? You said about ex-offenders and women. Where do you target your audience for that?
So basically, I was working freelance with a company before lockdown. Then we went on to Zoom workshops, and then I did workshops for mothers and their toddlers. So we did holistic care with like products, baby massage, and things like that. Now, going forward, I would like to target topics that are relevant, as in that people can actually get their teeth into and apply. So like you said, young women, I've got nieces, I've got daughters talking about their cycle, but also people who've struggled with the lockdown and are struggling with identifying with themselves because there's been so much going on. They've lost the whole kind of way of taking care of themselves, and their body's been stressed out. Their yonis, their cycles may have been affected. And I know a few people that lost babies during the pandemic because it was such a stressful time. Periods changed. Just a lot of things have impacted our bodies, and it's just getting that back in alignment. So it's just targeting audience as and when it's needed, really.
Mel, I was wondering about. Just came to me actually. We were chatting before we started recording, and vaginal discharge, again, something that's not talked about enough. There are normal discharges, right?
Yes, there are.
Right.
And signs to look out for. And going to your doctor is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. And also it's how you take care of your yoni as well, because there are times where we overly clean ourselves. We overly strip the viola. The vagina is a self-cleaning organ. It doesn't need the soap and the Dettol and all the other elements of cleansing that
Dettol.
Come on, you remember Dettol.
I was going to say, when I was a child, my mum used to put half a cap full of Dettol in my bathwater every time I washed.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't know if your parents are Caribbean. I don't know where they're from, Mel, but
my parents are Guyanese. My mother Guyanese. And it was just a highly, highly clean.
It just had to be clean. It was clean. Yeah. And you came out smelling like a clinic. It was yeah, clinically clean.
Clean head.
Yeah, seriously.
You could go out.
But Thrush Central? It's true. Did that not bring on thrush?
But it brought on BV.
Oh, is that what it? Oh my God!
On because bacterial vaginosis is when your pH balance is off, and it will produce a fish-like smell. You'll have a heavy cream discharge, and it's the yeast in essence. It will just go, and you need to have antibiotics to revert that. I knew a lot of girls who had that. I knew a lot of girls who were teased because of that. And I go, boys would mock because they didn't understand, because again, those conversations about feminine hygiene wasn't openly discussed. We had young women going around feeling awful about themselves because their parents taught them what they knew, and then that's been passed down. So that's why it's important. We are the role models for the younger generation to have these discussions. So there's nothing to be ashamed of in a very sexually liberated time, which again, let's be liberated in all aspects of our femininity, you know? So discharge is a very important thing to be aware of. Also how you take care of your yoni as well. Harsh soaps, just using warm water and just a light sponge. You don't need to rip, you know what I mean? The gentleness, the delicateness, because we are flowers, ladies, you know, come on.
Yeah, we can be gentle with our lady garden. I need to rough it up.
I've decided I'm Lily. Yeah, that's right. We're all flowers.
You're a lily. I love it. I'm an orchid.
Yeah.
But you're right. Growing up, like I say, I think my mum just wanted us to be clean. And for her, that was, a way of making sure that we were squeaky clean and it was all good. And, my cousins, we all used it. Luckily, I never had any adverse I wasn't affected by it negatively at all. But later on in life, I did some research, or I think I saw a television program about it, and they were saying that can cause thrush and, as you say, other illnesses. But yeah, we didn't have these sort of conversations, you just...
No.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think this is one of the first conversations I've ever had about something like this. I'm not saying that I haven't spoken to my friends about certain things, but this sort of open forum is quite unusual. And
Important.
I hope it's the first of many. Yeah, I hope it's the first.
Very important, because I've never spoken to my mum about my vagina. Let's just be real. I've never once. Even when I got pregnant, I think she thought I don't know how I got pregnant somehow. She was like, what? Hang on, you're pregnant already? It's like, yeah. So I've not once spoke to my mum about, I think when I got on period, she was just like, okay, there's some sanitary towels. But that's it. Never. And now I'm going to be 41 in December. I think because she's too embarrassed, and I'm glad that we're a lot more liberal now. She's in her 80s. So maybe back then it wasn't kind of, you didn't talk to your children about that. Because I think they're kind of linking it to, if she talked to me about that, then was it talking to me about sex and stuff like that? That's different, But this is not, we're not talking about that, are we? It's a sexual organ, but we're talking about the yoni in itself, not related to a man, just in itself, which I think is important to talk to our children, like I said before, about it. So, and like you said, Karen, it's kind of rare to have these conversations. So, yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you. Almost coming to the end. So is there anything you guys wanted to ask Mel before we wind it up, ladies?
I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed meeting you, talking with you. And like I say, it's really been an eye-opener for me. And I hope that this starts, many more conversations for women. It is rather like a sisterhood, like you described. And that's, what it feels like. So thank you.
Thank you for being so open. I really appreciate that, ladies. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mel, so much. Kay, you want to ask?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you for sharing your insights, your wisdom. You have a perfect voice for podcasting, by the way. I kind of was mesmerized by your sound. And I just felt drawn into what you're talking about. And I'm not going to get evangelical about it, but my daughter has the most horrendous period. So clearly she needs a consultation. I think she loves hers because I've always prioritized it, but she needs to get into you're really sacred. I think that's the element that's missing, is the sacredness. So how would you please tell us how we can book you, be part of a group you're running or a workshop, and how we can access your resources?
Okay. Again, thank you for having me, Kay. Really appreciate that. So for me, I do consultations. I can be booked via my Instagram, which is at Garden of Self. There's a booked in a tag there. You can either message me or book that way. They're 30 minutes. They're free. We just talk about the concerns you have and how you feel that now is the right time for you to do that, because it is a commitment to practicing and putting yourself first. In terms of the groups, I feel that the workshops for me are designed, depending on what the organization or the company is trying to achieve and how we can put that together. I try not to make things there's a template, but I like to be more flexible because people have different requirements, etc., different the age groups and the topic matter and such. So yeah, I'm open to discussions about that. But yeah, we just talk, we message, we have conversations like this, which are wonderful. I really appreciate the time today, ladies.
Thank you so much, Mel. Listeners, we'll leave all of Mel's details below: Mel's TikTok, Mel's Instagram, and Mel's website, so you can contact her put in your orders and arrange your consultations. So thanks again, Mel. Thank you for coming on Beauty Melanated podcast. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of people reach out. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, ladies.
It's been a pleasure.
We are beautifully.